Welcome back, guys. This is another episode of For the Republic. I'm Lewis. This is KD. What's up, man?
How's it going, man?
We're doing good. We're doing good. All right, we're going to bring another episode to you
Nice.
guys. Once again, we're going to start off with Hamas, Israel, black people, um, shit like
Black
that.
people.
Yeah, well, we're just including them because they don't feel like they're included sometimes. So,
The introduction is starting with Hamas and black people.
lots of black people. Those are the similarities, man. We'll talk about the similarities, but they're very similar. They don't want to believe it, but they are. They don't like each other, by the
Ah,
way, but they love each, but they have to. They don't know it. They don't know it yet. All right, we're moving on to we're moving on. All right, so as you all saw, the war in Gaza has intensified. There's been calls by the international community. We've talked about it before. You know what the UN chair said, which was like ridiculous. But there's new statements. There's new calls for a potential ceasefire, and there's major disagreements on, and also, I guess, insecurities or doubts of how this will be handled at the end. So, at the end of the war, at the end of the day, at the end of the story, what will happen? What is the ending going to look like in Gaza? What will happen? And the United States and Israel effectively have disagreements on how things should be handled. The Israelis, Netanyahu does not want a ceasefire. Effectively, his only thing that he'll do, the only ceasefire he sees is when he sees his firing on Gaza in Hamas. That's kind of the gist of what he said. The only resignation that he will see is the resignation of Gaza and or Hamas, I mean, which is kind of like literally what he said. Um, and I think that's the major questions. I think I also have those questions. Like, well, what is the point? Because you know, does Israel have a right to defend itself for the thousandth time? Yes, it does. Like they all do. If Israel had done this
any
to the
country do, yeah.
Palestinians, if Israel had done this to the Palestinians, which isn't a real country, you said country. I don't think that's a real country, but they said if Israel on October 7th ran into the West Bank and started massacring people on the streets, at bus stops, at festivals, at markets, at stores, just because they were Palestinian, right? Because that's what the other side did. They did that on October 7th just because they were Israeli, and also just because they were Jewish. At the end of the day,
Right. Yep.
well, I would say the same thing. Okay, yeah, you guys have the right to defend themselves. Now, there are further questions that I don't think we're going to waste this time discussing. Like, well, do you retaliate in the same way they did in a medieval? Because Hamas, as we've seen, has committed an atrocity in barbaric medieval ways. They went in, they pillaged, then they rampaged, they raped, they beheaded, they shot people in cold, dead murder. They just left people on the streets. They shot them without any disregard. That's literally what they did. So, does Israel do that? Well, no, I don't think they should do that. I mean, Ben Shapiro's out here saying that there is no proportionality to the response. It's like, all right, man, just relax. You don't even live there. Like, what are you talking about? There has
Hey,
to be
man,
a
he's heated.
proportionality because there's a thing as war crimes, and there's a thing such as rules. But then there's the other thing is that Israel has to be smart because it knows, and they should know, because they've been dealing with this for a long time, is that there is a huge propaganda machine behind the opposition. There is a huge propaganda machine behind the Palestinian advocates that show up every once in a while. The Iranians are using this machine to effectively portray a message of we're not involved, meaning Iran. Hezbollah is not involved in this. Ignore all that we do. That the Palestinians are poor, defenseless. They are being used as cannon fodder by not the Hamas, but by the Israeli military or defense forces in a genocidal conflict in which Israel wants to eliminate Palestine. That's the propaganda that's out there. The propaganda is that these are poor, defenseless people, mostly women and children, which is bullshit, that are defenseless, that are weak, that are poor, that are colored, and that are minorities. And that these white Jews, evil Jews, are going to eliminate them, even though the reality and the truth is, and we all know this, and we keep hearing this every single day, that the people shouting for genocide are the people shouting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That's genocidal. Like, Like that's the truth. That's the reality. That's the reality. So,
I just say how they're bringing skin color into it. It's so typical of them.
well, it's because that's the propaganda machine. It's because they can't use class as they always used to, so they use race.
No, they can't.
Because there has been a movement since the Soviet. So I'm gonna go on like on a little tangent because this is important because for a long, long time people have been ignoring this. People have been just
Yeah,
talking about a two-state solution. A two-state solution. There can't be a two-state solution because there needs to be wide range cultural change uh, for for people to recognize that just because you're Jewish, that does not mean you are the scum of the earth, and that because you're Palestinian, that doesn't mean that you have a right to make settlements in the West Bank. So both sides need to recognize because there are people in Israel who have these insane views that there should be no more Palestinians because of this. We were here first, 3,000 years ago. So both sides need to relax. We saw that.
I
I
agree.
mean, the fact that there were protests, not on, I mean, literally on October 8th, before the IDF even announced what they were planning of doing, because the IDF took its time to announce and tell people what they were going to do. They didn't just bomb Gaza right away.
No,
It's about to be a month since this happened.
damn. Time goes by quick. What the hell?
Exactly. I mean, and we have seen day after day a constant flurry of protests, pro-Palestinian protests on every single American campus, on every single street, big city street in America. And we've seen all this rhetoric of effectively just, oh, I mean, the fact that there were people in Australia, an example is Australia, where people were shouting gas to Jews.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We've seen what
Yeah,
happened
no,
in
actually,
Harvard.
I did wanted to mention Australia because I recently noticed that they started deploying their own aircraft and military. Are they going to be also involved in this war?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know because I don't understand. I don't know what the end goal is. So the United States has sent.
I
I
don't
mean,
understand either. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think. I mean, I don't.
I was surprised from Australia's side. I didn't think that
Yeah,
they were bringing their own military aircraft.
yeah. Considering they're like literally like like time zones and a hemisphere away. They're like literally in a different hemisphere. Like
Yeah, exactly.
miles and hours away. That well they have I guess there is a. I was going to mention this later, but I guess I can just briefly. There are two things that Israel needs. It's. I mean, you can fight a war. I mean, military strength. That's don't even mention it. They have it. But then there's
Yeah, they
another
have
thing.
it.
It's political support. You have to have political support to wage a war, and what that means is effectively that the people, the electorate, has to be in favor or allied with this party, with Israel, and that's a big thing. So Israel is dependent, is hoping that the United States can maintain that political support here. That's literally what that means. It's that the majority of the United States is in favor of helping Israel with this war. And I think we're playing a. I don't know. I don't really know how to judge it completely because there's a lot more that has to happen. And Biden's track record on foreign policy is an abject failure. It's like literally a 0 out of 100
It's horrendous.
because and that's why I can't give him a grade now because it hasn't nothing. I don't think the biggest. I don't think the worst has come yet. They're talking
Mm.
2.5 million Palestinians are going to be displaced. Now the Egyptians said that they don't want them. The Jordanians don't want them either. The Saudi Arabians have nothing to do with this, and they want nothing to do with it. The Iranians won't take them because they don't really care about them. The Lebanese won't take them either because they're just puppets of the Iranians. Syria won't take them because they might not even exist soon enough, and they're
Pakistan
already
even
involved.
anything?
Pakistan is too far away to do anything. Pakistan's literally is legit in Asia. It's in Southeast Asia, so they're not getting involved, even though that's a Muslim, effectively a majority Muslim country. But they're not going to get involved because they're far
Yeah,
away,
right.
and that country is like in economic catastrophe right now.
Well,
Turkey
true.
effectively has said that it will join the bombing of Israel should it do something worse, which I don't understand because I kind of do, but I don't understand because Erdogan was just talking about. helping negotiate a peace. But now he's saying that he wants to get involved. But he just wishes he was like an old he Erdogan wishes thinks he's an Ottoman sultan or something. So who the hell knows what he's going to say next? And
Right.
then and so I don't really know the players yet because nothing we haven't seen the worst yet. I don't think we've seen the worst yet. I don't think so. We'll talk about the refugees
Yeah.
later. But I wanted to talk about the underlying thing is that there is a um all those movements, this liberation, this victim movement, this pro-Palestinian movement that we see. And people are wondering what is happening. Why are so many young people getting involved? Well, all these young kids in college, what are they? What are they? They come in as normal people, and what do they leave as?
Retards.
But left-wing retards. And so
Yeah.
they become left-wing ideologues. They now view the world through this prism of intersectionality and this idea that there is a oppressor in the human story. There is this ongoing conflict constantly of the oppressor one side and then the oppressed on the other. The oppressor and then there's the oppressed. And so constantly they're talking about how a a group of people cannot succeed because there is another group pinning them down and controlling them. So they're oppressing them. And that's why they can't succeed. And so this intersectionality movement says that all peoples that are oppressed, and in this case now the modern view is that they have to be colored. So it's a racial prism of oppressed versus the oppressor. And so who is the oppressor in this modern ideology, this modern form of intersectionality? It's white people.
White
So white
people.
people are oppressing colored people across the globe in different facets and forms. And so the white Israelis are oppressors of Palestinians. And so that is a suffering conflict. That's why the PLO, the leading authority in the Palestinian Authority, so the leading party in the Palestinian Authority, is named the PLO, for which a long time has been a socialist, communist, Marxist group.
Yeah.
When you hear people talking about why did Israel helped create Hamas, well, Hamas wanted to replace the PLO. The same thing with the Mujahideen in Afghanistan in the 80s. Yeah, the Mujahideen wanted to wanted to get rid of the Soviet communists, the Soviet puppet in Afghanistan, and they did that. This notion that, well, Israel created Hamas years ago through the Mossad and through CIA and the CIA, because, well, this was a small conflict in a major Cold War. I'm not upstanding anybody. First of all, whether you like it or you don't, it happened. End of fucking story. It happened. What the hell are you going to do about it? Cry? It happened. I don't understand people are getting so angry. Is that supposed to justify what happened on October 7th? Something that happened
Yeah.
30 years ago?
Crying right
Something that
now.
happened in
Yeah.
the 90s or in the early 2000s when they got rid of the longtime leader of the Palestinian Authority? Is that literally what I'm supposed to do? No. I'm not. No, that's not what's going to happen. So what we have to do now is recognize that Hamas is in charge of Gaza, that the Palestinians in the West Bank are and because there are Palestinians in Gaza. They are Palestinians because all that region used to be Palestinian. That's why they're there. But they're not governed by the Palestinian Authority that is aligned with Hamas at the end of the day because they share the same views. Remember, the PLO until the 1990s did not want to recognize Israel as a viable state. It did not recognize them. It recognized them in the Oslo Accords. But what happened? What happened between 1960s, 1964, and 1963 to the Oslo Accords? That we need to know. Is it perhaps that Israel beat up and won wars against major countries that were allied with the PLO and did not like the fact that there was a major Jewish state or democracy in the world there next to them? Maybe that's it. Maybe that's why. And then they realized, oh yeah, well we can't really continue as a viable option in this Cold War if we are literally just saying, yeah, we're not only are we like a liberation army like every other socialist group in the world, communist group in the world, but we also hate Jews. And then you might say, well, why do they hate Jews? So we'll get into that. These groups, these groups were heavily not only does Islam not allow room for infidels and people of other faiths, they don't. They never have. These groups were influenced by very, very toxic ideologies. And one of those I mentioned is intersectionality. After World War II, after World War One, really, in World War II, throughout these eras, throughout all these years, these groups of people in Afghanistan, in India, in Pakistan, in the world that was now decolonizing, all these major thinkers and all these people made to these realms of the world and made connections and left behind seeds of this toxic ideology of this socialist, communist, postmodernist intersectionality, feminism, but not feminism that you know today, the feminism you knew back then of suffrage and victims and oppression and
Yeah.
it's a deep deep form of the true roots of it, not the ones you see today of the Me Too's and the pink hair in the pussy,
Mhm.
not that. It was the purest forms of it. When the
It was
world was
really
real,
bushy.
when the world was real and things went down and there was a more exciting time and when things were learned not on Twitter or instantly on a TikTok video or on IG. People didn't get news like that back in the day. Things could develop, things could happen, and people could do things. There was a freedom to do things. So these people who claimed that they were oppressed could go. For example, people were in the Black Liberation Army, the BLA, which was a group that split from the Black Panthers, was a socialist communist group for Black liberation in America. People who were members of that group, they were able to travel to places like East Germany, like Egypt, like Iran, like Palestine, and they made these connections, and so were the academics that soon became to teach in our universities. All those people were products of all those ideologies forming and spreading around in academia and in the community and in the public and in our culture. I mean, you literally have people in major culture. I'll give this. It's like a layup right now, but Tupac Shakur,
Who?
Tupac Shakur.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Tupac was a child conceived in an environment that fostered all of those toxic ideologies. Do we not remember who his aunt was? His aunt,
I don't even know his aunt.
his aunt was the woman who was a New Jersey worker of the part of the Black Panthers and the BLA, who shot a cop, a state trooper in New Jersey, and fled to Cuba, where she still lives.
Afani Shakur and Mutulu Shakur, and often described as their son Tupac Shakur's godmother or step-aunt. Wow. One of the FBI's most wanted terrorists. Wow.
Asada Shakur shot a cop in New Jersey, escaped the prison, and then went and now lives in Cuba and is still alive. She was part of the Black Liberation Army, which was a group which split from the Black Panthers at some point. But this was a group that, I remember, it's that word liberation. It's always this word liberation, that there's this like that they believe that they're in this prison, that they can't do anything, that they have to rebel, that they have to fight, and that it has to be often violent. Because in that era, that violence was effectively recognized. It wasn't a thing. It was a real thing. There was all these conflicts, and all those ideologies came out of the end of the colonial world. So in places like Egypt, you had General Nasser, who was an Arab nationalist, who believed in the end of the British or the Europeans dictating terms to the Arabs or the Egyptians and telling them how to run their country. This really pure revolutionary, but this, in a sense, liberation that they were not only were they oppressed as people, but their minds and spirits were oppressed, that they weren't allowed to be free, that they couldn't express a national identity, that they couldn't, things that were obviously false, but that they were oppressed as even as a spiritual people, that their history was oppressed, that their cultures were oppressed by these dominant colonial powers, and they came out of there with this sense of true nationalism as but racial and ethnic. So the Egyptians came and still have this idea of this, to this day of this Arab Egyptian nationalist identity that they are a that they are a major force in the world, even though they've gotten whooped by Israel. That they're a
Kind of you,
power.
you kind of want to question that, like during that time, how in the hell in countries like Egypt and Syria ended up losing to one country, Israel? Kind of want to question the army, honestly. How does that even happen? I'm
Well,
actually
remember
kind of curious
these
on the
were groups
armory.
that remember Israel back in the day. These were different times. It's not the same Israel you see today. And the same Israel today. Remember, Israel in 2006 waged a war against Lebanon, and the Lebanese lost so badly that they're still afraid of that today. They had an economic minister just come out and say, "Yeah, we don't want another war because we're still suffering from it today." Or a former economic minister pretty much say that, like, "Yeah, we're still suffering today." And so, because this fight, Israel's fight and its army lives by this one, I guess, strand or this one ideal that its existence or its fight for its existence is existential. That that the threat that Israel faces on a daily basis is existential, meaning that it faces a civilizational turning point type of war. That if it loses that war, it ceases to exist as a whole, because that would mean that there would be no Israel the day after if it would lose. And those
Right.
were effectively the terms. I mean, if Israel had lost to Egypt in 1967, it would effectively no longer cease. It would cease to exist. If
Yeah.
people got their way, and when they say from the river to the sea, which they don't understand what that means, they think it's just a cute gimmicky thing. That yeah, we're for the poor people. It's like no, you don't really
The
understand what
followers, man.
they
No,
don't.
no, they don't understand.
They don't. That means that Israel ceases to exist. It won't exist after that. It's a deeply genocidal apocalyptic situation for Israel. It just won't exist. And
Yeah, they don't really understand. Back in the old days, Jews and Muslims, they lived together in that one area. They all lived together like thousands of years. So it's not like who owns who,
yeah,
but
I was listening to Peter Hitchens this week, and he was pretty much talking about how he had been to to the West Bank and he'd been to Gaza, and because for a long time Palestinians have crossed the border into Israel to work as farmers as like
yeah, right. And
they
you kind
work,
of want to question why it's not the opposite.
and so yeah, that's one. But also it's like this. He made a point of saying, I can remember a time, even during the 60s and 70s and 80s, when there wasn't this big insistence of them having to forcibly coexist. Meaning, when the world wasn't forcing them to make peace, there was more peace. The issue wasn't brought up. There wasn't an issue. There wasn't this constant fear of a genocidal war or holy jihad. There wasn't this threat. People crossed in and lived their day to day lives. Is it that now global interventionism, or let's just say global intervention, has now caused a entire conflict to unleash? Yeah, you could probably say that. You could say that. But I want to get back to the college students that are now poisoned with this ideology. So they view this struggle as what have I said? There, it's all these things that come together, but they're all in this big pack. At the end of the day, what is the package? It's this new form of postmodern socialist communist thought that No longer can they go by the same lines of the rich versus the poor. They can do that on their. They can do that as a hobby. But the main focus, their main business is race, ethnicity, who you are or who you think you are. And so, whether when they look at things like blacks versus white cops, they look at things like Palestinians versus Israelis. They view things like what's another I can add in there, etc. So, there's I can't think of one right now, but that's sort of the line they're drawing. They look at
Right.
Armenians and Turks.
Hmm.
They look
Hmm.
at Serbs and the other ones and Croats. So they're viewing all these deep conflict, Ukrainians and Russians. And so you notice, right? It's like, why does this
Yeah.
strand of the university, these new generations of kids and all, but also this global leftist movement tries to sort of fashion this niche and say, okay, the oppressed peoples of the world unite. It used to be poor workers of the world unite. Now it's oppressed peoples of the world unite. And these oppressed people have to have these main characteristics. They have to be colored. They can't be white.
St- Standing in their shoes, it is a effective.
Well, it is if you're Palestinian because you can't make it not make
Well,
sense.
people in color general, yeah.
But if you're colored, yeah, you would think so. You would say you would think it makes sense. But then when you realize, wait a second. If the Palestinians are a free people, then they have to automatically, like all people, if they are free and they are free in the West Bank, don't they have to do what all free people have to do and strive for truth and live within that truth and live in a forthrightly responsible way? And that would mean that they would have never gotten in business with people like Hamas. Because Hamas didn't just come out of nowhere. It didn't just invade Gaza and say we're going to be in charge. It was elected as a political group. It is a political organization
It
that
was like what,
operates.
50%
Over
people voted for them.
50% of people in Gaza, the Gaza Strip, elected Hamas into power. And Muhammad Abbas, who supposedly speaks for all the Palestinian people, but now all of a sudden wants to make this distinction that, oh, Gaza and the West Bank are two different things. I don't run Gaza. But before that, you've been talking about reunification, which just literally mean carving out Israel and saying that Gaza and West Bank have to be together by connecting all of that and making it Palestinian. Like, what are you trying to say? Because if at the end of the day you get your wet dream of only Palestine, you're going to be in charge of them, and Hamas is there, and you're not going to be running them. Hamas is going to be running you.
People don't realize that their net worth literally over like what, like multi millions, and they kind of don't want to. They don't really want to question their own leaders. All you want to just
Well,
blame is just
and,
Israel. Pretty much it.
and wealth isn't even a question at this point in terms of like, oh well, are they wealthy? Are they? I don't think that, because that doesn't matter. The wealth of these groups doesn't matter. I mean, Pablo Escobar was worth billions of dollars, but that doesn't say, oh well, people, we should focus on the fact that he has all this money and he's corrupt.
I guess,
Because the main
but
conflict.
it does. Go ahead.
No, what were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say like it does affect a lot of people in Palestine. I just saw a little video of a Palestinian woman who was shouting out to Hamas leaders and the Palestinian leaders that they have so much money. They drive around with SUVs while we're here stuck and poor. You know, and then you got people in America constantly blaming Israel, but don't um see what the Palestinian leaders and Hamas leaders are actually doing to their own people.
Because they knew that when they signed up. Hamas never said it was when Israel gave Gaza back to the Palestinians that were there, and it left because it did occupy it. Because we'll get into it, it won it. They didn't occupy it because they walked in and just take that part of Israel. They won a war with Egypt. I mean, ask yourself: before Israel took Gaza, what was it before that? It was Egyptian. It was Egyptian. And before it was Egyptian, it for a short period of time was part of the British Mandate. But before that, it was a part of the Ottoman Empire. And you know how long it was part of the Ottoman Empire? For centuries.
Quite a long time.
Centuries. And before that, you want to know what it was before that? It was Roman. It was run by the Roman Empire. It was run by the Roman Empire. And before it was the Roman Empire, who was there? The Jewish people were there. The Jews. So there's been this
Yeah, it was a mix of everything.
it's like okay, well, it never took it from the Palestinians because the Palestinians have never been in charge of anything. They've always been like a colony of something. They've been a state of a bigger entity. They've been annexed. They're like Puerto Ricans. They're just there, but they're not in charge of anything. And the Puerto Ricans are in charge of their own little commonwealth, but they can't run anything. They're incredibly corrupt. Unlike you might ask yourself, it's like, well, why do people in Lebanon let people like Hezbollah run their country? Well, it's because it's the opposite of what Hamas is doing. They're not corrupt. It's amazing. Hezbollah in Lebanon isn't corrupt. It's a terrorist organization. It is. But the Hezbollah led group that leads Lebanon isn't that corrupt. And that's why people tolerate them because they say, yeah, I mean, they're bad people and they want to kill Jews and they are a terrorist group. And technically, they're run by Iran, the Ali Khamenei specifically. But, you know, they do have social services. There is some sort of welfare here. They kind of try to maintain things, even though that last time they had that war, it kind of wrecked their economy. But they're not corrupt. They don't steal money. They're not Mayor Adams or Joe Biden. They don't do that. There's no Hunter Biden in China. There's no Lebanese Hunter Biden. So they'll say that. They'll say, yeah, well, we don't have corruption like you guys do. You guys, the Americans have Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. They're corrupt. We know that. How come you guys don't know that? We know it in Lebanon, and we have nothing to do with it. And then they'll tell you, we don't have that problem. Yeah, we have Hezbollah. They're really bad, but, they're good with us. That's why they keep them. That's why literally that's why. So that's why you say, well, why do they not like Hamas? Well, they should have known. Hamas said in its charter, they never intended to run Gaza, the Gaza Strip, as a political organization. They use Hamas uses Gaza as a shield, as a backdrop, as a cannon fodder for its ongoing conflict with Israel. That's why it takes all of the money from that's made in Gaza and it spends it in its underground network. You don't think that they have hospitals underground? You don't think that they have marketplaces underground for Hamas? You don't think they have shelters underground? They do. That's where all the money in Gaza goes.
Yeah.
It goes to Hamas, which lives underground. Another reason I think this war is kind of pointless. I don't think this is the right way, because even if you get rid of the cells of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, do you know where the Hamas headquarters is?
Nope.
It's in Qatar.
Oh, I did heard about that actually.
It's in Qatar. They have cells in Syria. They have people in Yemen. Is Israel now going? If Israel keeps saying that it's going to get rid of Hamas, is it now going to bomb Qatar? Is it going to bomb Syria, who Syria, by the way, is bombing them? Is it going to bomb Yemen, which, by the way, Yemen is bombing Israel? Is Lebanon, who is bombing Israel right now, are they going to war with them? That's the question, and that's why it's so difficult to predict what happens.
It is
because Hamas isn't confined to one area. Its main place is Gaza, but its headquarters is the leader of Hamas is in Qatar. He's chilling in Qatar, who, by the way, held a World Cup. They host the leader of a terrorist organization. And nobody says anything about it because they're too preoccupied drinking the Kool-Aid about Israel that has been developed and curated for years now at the end of the day, by Iran and China and Russia, who benefit from this. Because this is a microcosm of a greater Cold War that has continued. What's my I'm asking you again, because you should remember, what is my theory on the Cold War? You don't remember? When did the Cold War end in my
Hello, let me think.
when did it end in my theory?
I don't remember your theory.
It never
I
ended.
don't.
It never ended. My theory is the Cold War never ended. It never ended. We're still in it. The point of the Cold War was not to defeat just the Soviet Union. Why did we go against the Soviet Union? Because it was a communist nation. It was the poster boy for the internationalist communist movement.
Mhm.
Remember, Hitler's was not a Hitler's. Why was Hitler's National Socialism extremely different from the internationalist workers' Soviet communism model? It wasn't an internationalist movement. It had no interest in it. The socialist movement in the Soviet Union
Oh,
had no home. Its headquarters was the Soviet Union, but it always talked about how this was an international movement. That's why it says, "Workers of the world unite." This is our headquarters in Stalingrad, Moscow, in Leningrad. But there is no one nation. There is no borders. We don't recognize borders. The whole world should be singing the gospel of the workers. The workers should be there should be proletariats in every country, in every nation. That was the objective. But no, for Hitler, it was a racial nationalist movement. It was German. For him, the fatherland not only was it important, it was everything. And that's why he emphasized race. People like to think he did this because he used the Jews as a way. No, he didn't like the Jews. He was authentically against Jews. I don't know if people would try to say, well, no, he was just dumb and he didn't. These were extremely clever people, extremely intelligent. That's why it was different because the left likes to pretend that they don't have anything to do with Nazis, even though literally Nazi is literally nationalist socialist. It literally is national socialism. That is Hitler's movement.
right.
And so, and by the way, the
You
Nazis
shouldn't
had
know
a
that, man.
huge influence on the Arab countries because a lot of the Arab countries were aligned with. Remember, in World War One, who did the Ottoman Empire take sides with in World War One? The
The
Germans.
Nazis. Okay.
No, the Germans, the Imperial Germans, before the Nazis, the Imperial Germans. The Ottomans didn't exist in World War Two, but they were Arab countries now managed by British Empire, or maybe the Russians had an influence. And that's why over this era, that's why I said before, this era, this 20th century, there's this like there has been this covert movement operation of these thinkers, of these ideologues, of these idea makers traveling to these Arab nations, to the African countries as they become independent and spreading these ideas of intersectionality, feminism, existentialism, postmodernism in terms of Michael Foucault. All these things
Mhm.
mixed, and what do you have today? You have you have an international movement of effectively that is anti-Semitic, postmodern, and rooted in Marxism, and it's amplifying itself and it's highlighted in the universities where these
He
kids that
blended up.
come out of these systems believing all those ideologies poisoned by them, they now repeat the same things. They don't understand
It's
why.
scary. It's scary to think about how well planned this is for the long term. Like it's really that scary to think like that.
So
Wow.
as
So
the
yeah,
The
yeah,
Americans have been so
so it's
react.
just a mix of everything.
Yeah, it's a mix of all these different like it's all these different flavors. It's like I keep the Powerpuff Girls. It's sugar, spice. It's like intersectionality, feminism, Marxism, and everything nice. You just throw it in. You get the Powerpuff Girls, or in other words, you get the squad.
All right.
And for America, we got the squad. And what are they? They are deeply anti-Israel. They don't like Israel, and you have to ask yourself, well, why don't you like Israel? You're not
They
Muslim.
won't give you
You
an
don't.
answer.
You can't because see if it was just jihad, right? You might say, okay, That sort of makes sense. But Indonesia is not sitting here saying, but the Indonesians and the Malaysians aren't sitting here and saying, yeah, we need to get rid of Israel. Last I checked, they're not. In fact, they're not saying anything. Why do I mention them? Because they're also majority Muslim. They're one of the largest Muslim countries in the world.
Yeah.
Some of the largest Muslim countries in the world are not in the Middle East. They're in the Far East Asia. They're in Far East Asia. They're in Ladyboy territory. They're not in the Middle East.
I'm surprised they didn't kill him.
They're out here. They're out here in the middle. They're out here in the east. They're in the Pacific Ocean. Like they're nowhere near. Like people don't understand. I mean, they're in Indonesia. They're in Africa. They're in like they're in places like that.
Oh yeah, Muslim Africans. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, come to think of it, I haven't seen much of like black Muslims protesting in America or other places. That's so weird.
The largest country with a Muslim population is Indonesia. 266 million people.
Jeez.
The
Of
next
Muslims.
of Muslims.
Wow.
Next is Pakistan, India, Bangladesh with 150, Nigeria, Egypt. Now we're getting to the Middle East with Iran and Turkey. Algeria is in Africa. Sudan is literally in Africa. Iraq, Afghanistan, Morocco, Ethiopia, Saudi Arabia, Uzbekistan, Yemen, Niger, Malaysia, which is in the middle of the ocean, sinking. Russia. I mean, Indonesia's not out here saying that we need to, to the river to the sea. I don't hear them saying that. In fact, they haven't.
Damn, Indonesia has like over 12% of Muslim population.
It has an 86% Muslim population.
A country home to 12.7%.
Oh, of the world's Muslims.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but that 12% is 87% of its population. So almost 90% of Indonesia is Muslim.
The fuck? How the fuck did that happen?
Well, when they were
Jeez.
they were the so when the Ottomans started becoming a thing, that was kind of the end of the traders. So the Dutch sort of declined, the Portuguese, sort of declined. They weren't really going down to that era, and these powers sort of fought for trade in this time, and so um, Muslim traders just spread Islam there.
Oh, okay.
As they brought trade, the Muslims won out in that because the Portuguese, the Dutch, even the French, they weren't really religious. They weren't religious explorers that way, like the Spanish were. If the Spanish had been there first, they would be Catholic. They would like the Philippines. They would be Catholic, and they're still Catholic
Imagine.
today.
Holy fuck, imagine
There
that.
would be 300 million Catholics just sitting there in the middle of nowhere for no damn reason. Like in Asia, where the fuck are you Muslim in Far East Asia?
Yeah, right.
Like it's like okay, but it's because of trade. It's like well, all these people kept fighting over us for trade, not really militarily, but for trade. But anyways, back to the point of these kids now believing. But no, that's kind of where the support for it comes. So I want to show a little presentation here about what we have. So pretty much, what did I?
When you mentioned all these liberation groups organization that you mentioned, these happen by one man, which is Karl Marx. Is that right?
No, but more specifically, Hegel. So Marxism is attributed to him because he was a major writer of the book, but his buddy, his pal, was Hegel, and Hegel can be described as the more communist of the two. So Hegel's hardcore, but Marx was the major one, the major name, and the more popular name. Nobody wants to be called a Hegelist. That sounds lame. You want to be called a Marxist. Marxist is a cool name. They're good at brand.
Hegelist.
Yeah, they're good at branding. They're good at branding. They're good at that. So these are, you mentioned all these groups that were, the ELN is a major group in Colombia that still exists today. Whether or not they want to tell you, and it's still there. It is in Spanish it is the you see Ejército de Liberación Nacional. In English that is the National Liberation Army. Ejército is army. You can kind of deduce the other three words. Liberation is that one, national. What are they? They're a Marxist-Leninist guerrilla insurgency group involved in the continuing Colombian conflict, which has existed since 1964. A mini battle, a mini side quest of the major Cold War that has still not ended. Because that's why I say it's like, well, how can it end if things like this are still going on and they still affect the Americans? I don't understand. Like, how can you just say that it ended?
This is one of the longest war in modern times.
And so, look at the name, Liberation Movement. And this is another terrorist organization. Guess who they're allied with? They're allied with Hamas and Hezbollah. There was a Vice group. There was a Vice documentary documenting the trade of weapons. It was on ISIS, and it was a question of how does ISIS get its weapons and its drugs? These are part of the people. The drugs are grown in South America, in Central and South America, and they're smuggled across the Atlantic on ships out of Venezuela by these people. ELN, FARC, M19 used to be in that business. And they smuggle drugs and weapons through Africa. And who runs Africa? It's Boko Haram. Mm-hmm. Boko Haram is a Muslim terrorist group. Same sort of thing. And they help smuggle drugs, human beings, women, children, across the world through areas. So they all control these regions. South America, Boko Haram in Africa is the major one. Hezbollah is the major one in the Middle East, which all these countries hate, by the way, secretly. They won't tell you that in public, but they all hate them. Every single one of them hates Hezbollah and Iran.
All right.
So here's the next one. The People's Liberation Army, the armed wing of the Chinese Communist Party. That is the army of China. It consists of 5 service branches: the Ground Force, Navy, Air Force, Rocket Force, and Strategic Support Force. It is under the central leadership of the Central Military Commission, the CMC, and its chairman as commander-in-chief, meaning Xi Jinping. Then there's the one that everybody keeps talking about. The Palestinian, wait for it, Liberation Army. I'm going to try to say the name. It is the Jayesh Tahrir al-Palestine.
No, that's not how you. That's not how you. That's not how you say it.
How you say it?
This is how you say it. This is how you say it, right? Allahu Akbar. That's how you say it.
Bruh. All right.
Not that hard.
It is ostensibly the military wing of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO. So not only Palestine goes way out. It goes out. It not only does it have a liberation army, but it has a liberation organization. That's how oppressed they are. They need to. Set up in the 1964 Arab League. Set up in the 1964 Arab League.
That's how oppressed they are. Holy shit. Yeah, they need 2.
Yeah. They can't have one.
Wow. That's how weak they are.
Yeah. Not only that. So there's one. This set up in the 1964 Arab League summit held in Alexandria, Egypt, with the mission of fighting Israel. Whoa. So General Nasser, his goal, and this is this era here where you have this is the midst of the Cold War. This is it. This is the prime time Cold War era. The 50s and 60s, and the 50s and 60s are really the heat of it. Everyone's going batshit crazy because the world is turning into this. There's a new page turning. The era of colonialism and empires is gone. The death of empires is upon us, and it's time to now decide what we're going to do. And that is the message in Africa. That Egypt is one of the first ones, and they come out in General Nasser, who takes over Egypt and runs it for maybe like say 20 years, give or take. His goal is to unite the Arab world against its common enemy, which is the West. They don't like it. They don't like the fact that they've been colonized, and he feels like he's been disrespected, and his people have. And the Arabs, they need to now solidify their support and establish a common culture, a common sense of belief, a common ideal, and their main threat is Israel, because that is an imposition on Arab land. He doesn't like that. This is a precursor of what now becomes a war in 1967 that Egypt leads against Israel. And so in 1964, in this Arab League, which is literally just like a G7 type of meeting, all these Arab countries come together and they say, we don't like Israel. We're Arab. We like goats. We're Muslim mostly. We do believe that a illiterate warlord, warlording merchant, for some reason, even though he couldn't read or write, was given the word of God somehow. We all believe these things. And so that's when it starts. But again, the key word, liberation. It's this key word that's always here. And then there's the fist, because this is the logo of Hezbollah. The fist, the rose. It's this common. That's why I keep saying it's a socialist, postmodern, Marxist-Leninist, socialist, communist movement. Which is all the symbols.
What is the meaning of the rose?
The rose. Well, that they come in peace.
How can they come in peace when they're holding a gun?
Well, they're not supposed to be holding a gun, but that's how they do it, because they say that they're suffering, that this suffrage movement comes through violence, that they will now achieve their goals through violence, that they have been oppressed,
And they should get rid of the fucking rose.
and then there's the rose. Well, I don't
What
remember
a bunch of
exactly the rose.
dumbasses who made that
Here's
fucking
the fist.
logo.
The fist is supposed to signify that they are fighting oppression, that they're fighting suppression, that they're fighting colonialization, that they're fighting a oppressor, and that's the fist. You guys are
And how
Muslim,
they're fighting? By killing.
or not, or maybe they're not killing. Maybe they're doing this. Your favorite one. This is your favorite one. You love this one. Out of all of them,
How
I
my
know you
favorite
love this.
one?
You love this one though,
No, I don't. Whoa, 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 whoa! Explain it to me. How is this my favorite? Explain it to me.
because you love everything about this. You like wearing shorts. He's wearing shorts. You like holding signs. He's holding signs. You like,
You like to wear bandanas over your mouth,
but I don't like the color, so I don't like that one.
and you wear that faggot hat too.
I mean, I wear the glasses. I'll wear the. I don't know about the hat, but I'll wear the glasses. I mean, I don't.
No,
I don't have as
you
big a nose
you
as you.
would wear glasses.
I would wear the glasses, and you have a
What,
bike.
what, what does the shirt say? To sleep till?
I don't know, some Brooklyn, New York type shit.
Yeah, so that would be something you will wear.
So here's a sign. It's stop killing us. It's like, well, who's killing you? Like yesterday, before you did, because like before you did this, before he ever thought of this, who was trying to kill him except someone that was black? Ungalum. So here's another one. This is the Irish Nationalist Liberation Army, which is aligned with the IRA, because you got the Irish
When?
flag. Here
Oh,
it is again.
right.
The fist. This was when the British were fighting these were the troubles, and then from like the 60s all the way to the 90s, when the Irish wanted to separate and they wanted to become an independent place, and they were bombing and literally bombing. These weren't just people. These were literally they were bombing banks, church, hospitals. They were shooting. They killed the so the Queen's brother. Like I guess the Prince of the Prince Philip, the husband of Queen Elizabeth II. His uncle was assassinated by the IRA
Oh
in
yeah, right.
70. I'm gonna say 78 or 79,
What is seven? Oh,
and it was in Ireland, and he was in a bomb on a boat. he took out his family members, I think his grandsons, to fish on a boat, and kids from the
Hmm.
community. His family was out on a boat fishing, and they bombed it, and they killed people. They killed kids that had nothing to do with this conflict, but because he
Yeah.
was there, they killed him. So remember, these groups, they talk about, the children in the Palestinian children. Well, they don't have any remorse for Israeli children. They don't. They'd have no remorse. Here's another one. Here is the women. You love this. You love this one.
That
You're,
shit
you're
ugly as hell.
well, they did their best.
Well, I'm assuming it's created by a woman.
It was created by a lesbian, so it was even worse.
Ah, yeah, there you go. No wonder.
And then there's the Spanish Workers' Party, the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party. Same thing. It's a classic one. The closed fist with the rose. The rose. And it's red. Remember, it's always red. For some reason, it has to be red. There has to be red in this all the time.
You know what that means?
Yeah. Well, it's the socialist banner. They've always used red. The communists have always used red. The Red Army. Remember, it's the Red Army.
Oh yeah, well, China.
No, the Soviet Red Army. The Soviet Red Army
Oh yeah, them too.
was
Yeah,
strong.
right.
And remember,
Oh yeah.
the Soviet experiment, the Soviet Union was created. Who were the founders? Who came up with the idea of a Soviet Russia, of a Soviet Union?
Well, I'm assuming it goes deeper than Stalin.
Oh, way deeper.
No.
Lenin
Yeah,
was
yeah,
sent.
I wouldn't know.
Lenin, at the time that the idea of a Soviet Union was supposed to be made, he was living in Germany. Lenin was effectively in Germany. He was banned out of Russia. He wasn't supposed to be. He wasn't allowed in Russia. Who,
Oh,
who
I
at the
remember.
end of the day started? You want to know why the Soviet Union became what it was? It's always the same people, by the way. The most one of the most underrated, sinister governments in the world in modern history was the Imperial German government. This was not the Nazis. This was the final. These were the Imperial Germans, which were led by the Kaiser. You remember? So you play Civ. Civ is civilization. There's a Kaiser. There's
Yeah.
a German emperor. The German emperor, what we would call the German emperor, his name is the Kaiser.
Hmm.
So you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Okay. There is a government. There is an imperial government. I'm going to set the scene. It's a cold, starry night in Berlin, 1915. I don't know why it has to be cold or starry, but it was sometime in that time. The Germans
Well, it
are
can't be
fighting.
hot.
It could be hot, but typically it's Germany, so no, it's probably not hot. But it's a cold, starry night in Germany in 1915, and they're now fighting a war. There's a world war, and it's them. It's the Hungaro-Austrians, led by and it's the Ottomans, and there's millions of people dying, literally. The French and the British, in total, in that 3 to 4 year war, lose 2 million people. 2 million men die, like literally, like that, like they just die. Actually, I think it's worse. I think both lost 2 million men. While you're listening to me, let's look up the casualties to this. Look up the casualties to World War One. Okay, the Germans are the major power here. The Ottomans joined because they need to join something because they haven't been involved in anything for a while now, and that country is sort of collapsing.
Jeez.
That empire is collapsing. It's no longer harems and invading and holy wars. There's no more jihad, and there's now a secular movement starting in 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 the Ottoman Empire. They don't want a they don't want their governments led by the Sultan. They want a government led, or the viziers. They want a government led by people, and it doesn't have to be Muslim. So now there's a big problem. So now they join a war. They join this world war. And so the Germans at some point, because the Russian army, the Russian Empire has joined the war. They're in it. And they're not on the side of the Germans. They're on the side of the British, the French, and that's who they side on. And one thing they know about the Russians is they don't know how to fight a war, but they always know how to stay in one because they have a shit ton of people.
Right. Right.
But guess what? Those people that are fighting this war, they don't understand why they're in it. They just lost the war to the Japanese in 1913, so they have no idea why
Mhm.
they're here. And they eventually go on to lose another war against the Japanese, and also the Finnish, and also in Finland. That's when the Soviets take over. They lose a war to the Japanese, and then they also lose another war to the Finland. And so, what do the Germans do? These clever Germans, these smart ass Germans who work for the Kaiser, literally say, "Oh wait, we're gonna send some. We need to find a way to get the Russians out of here before shit really hits the fan." Because we sense that there's people that are angry. Because nobody in Russia, by the way, can read. 90% of the Russians in 1915 can't read.
Oh, that's sad. What the fuck?
They are also poor.
Yeah.
There is no major industrial industry. Russia, for a long time, because it's the most eastward European empire, it's backwards. Most of its emperors, in fact, almost all of them, have a very difficult time reigning in corruption, and they have a very difficult time establishing an industrial base. But they're very Christian, meaning Orthodox. They're very Orthodox Christian. In fact, the last Tsar of Russia, Nicholas, very Christian, very family oriented, but had no interest in running an empire. Like literally had no interest. Just did anything to not want to do it. His body hurt because he didn't want to do it. Literally, he just didn't. He didn't want the job. He didn't like it. And you would think it's like, well, you're literally convinced when you're a kid and you're a prince and the heir apparent of an empire that you're chosen by God. And he believed it. He believed that he was anointed by God to be an emperor. But he didn't like the job because his people can't read. I mean, it's like you're in Civ, but you got the dumbest country. Just imagine it. You're in
I know how
Civ,
that feels. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And there's barbarians all over the place because Russia in the Tsarist Russia is a free for all in most places outside major cities like St. Petersburg and in Moscow and etc. And so what do the Imperial Germans do is that they send a contingent of people, socialists and communists, like who's the leader of them?
Hitler.
No, they sent them to
What are we
Russia.
talking about?
The Imperial Germans send a contingency of communists to Russia in secret, in secret, and they give them a bunch of money, by the way, to do what they got to do. Who is the leader of this group? You mentioned their name before. It's Lenin. Vladimir Lenin living in
Okay.
Germany. Vladimir Lenin living in Germany goes secretly funded and told by the German government, go be nasty over there and get these people out of the war. What they didn't expect is that they actually won the revolution, and now Lenin and his cabal is in charge of an entire former empire. And not only that, they killed the entire Romanov family. Literally in the middle of a cabin in the woods, murdered them, massacred them. The
How
Romanovs,
how long did he rule Russia?
who?
Lenin.
So from like 1917, he led revolutions and he was effectively, he couldn't, so by like 1921, Lenin had suffered like he had heart problems and he had suffered strokes. So by like 1922, 23, when he eventually dies, he's effectively handicapped. He can't really speak.
So
He can't
30,
really lead.
40.
Can you look up when
Oh,
he
so
died?
So he died when he was 53.
No, what
Uh,
year?
say it again.
What year?
Uh, January 21st, 1924.
So, yeah,
That's when
so
he
by
died.
1924, he has suffered. I think Lenin suffers 2 or 3 strokes. By in those last like 3 years, he's handy. Lenin is sort of kept in a wheelchair. He can't move. He can't go anywhere. He can't really do his job. But he's in. I think he's in. I think he's in Moscow. I think that's where he runs his government, or I think St. Petersburg. But he's running the government literally from his office, and he's now concerned with, okay, I know I'm about to die because I've had literally like 2 or 3 strokes. The next one might kill me, or I might just die before I have one. I have heart problems. I have other problems. I can't really walk. I can't really talk. And I have this maniac named Stalin who is really good at being in all the meetings. And he's really good at consolidating and understanding the fine print. And he's really good at parliamentarian business. And then I have my natural protege and his natural successor, Leon Trotsky. Leon Trotsky was the military genius, or so they say, that led them to win against the Imperial Russian government or the
Oh,
Imperial Army in Russia, led by the Tsar, the White Army. They're the ones who led that. They're the ones who won that. So, but Trotsky is not really. Trotsky is more of a Che Guevara type of person. He's out there. He's not. Remember, Trotsky dies in Mexico of all places. Trotsky
yeah,
is murdered, assassinated in Mexico. He was he. There's if you go to the New York Library, there is a section of the library that says Leon Trotsky went here every single day.
really.
He lived in New York City after he had to leave. So there's a power struggle after Lenin dies suddenly, and there are 2 people that are the natural successors. Lenin has tried to tell everybody to not ever let Stalin in charge, and what happens? Stalin ends up being in charge. Because of this issue, Stalin rounds up every single person that opposes him and effectively kills them or gets them out of or pushes them away. One of the
Okay.
major leader of this is Trotsky. Trotsky leaves the Soviet Union again, and he has to like travel the world effectively, going from place to place. He spreads the communist message, but it's really a different one. He sort of takes it on differently. He doesn't like Stalinism. He advocates for Trotskyism, which he believed was the natural successor of Leninism. There's this like
mm,
romanticization that, well, would the Soviet Union be as bad if Lenin had never died? The answer is yes, because the Gulag system starts under Lenin, not under Stalin. It just evolves and accelerates under Stalin. But this idea that it wouldn't have under Lenin is false. And the same thing under Trotsky. Now, would Trotsky have been as militant as Stalin? I don't know. I don't know. People would like to say no, and I maybe lean that way. But would it have been the
mm.
same? I think Lenin, I think Trotsky even admitted, yeah, the final product is the same. It may have not been that bloody, but the final product would have been the same. But were the number of deaths in the Soviet Union a product of the system? That is the debate that they would have. What was your question?
Oh no, I was gonna read a little bit of Lenin's, like read a little bit of his bio.
Oh yeah, everybody knows about Lenin, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, everybody knows about Lenin.
I've heard of Lenin, but I don't. I
Yeah,
never really
yeah, but
know
he was yeah.
about him.
Remember, this movement has never been art has never been natural. It's never been a natural movement. Nobody's ever been no, nobody. There haven't been elections to elect them. So this is sort of forgotten now. But Russia had 2 revolutions in 1917. There is the March Revolution, the February Revolution, and then there's the Winter Revolution, the fall. In the fall,
Okay, you said March, February, and what was the last one?
there was one in February
Okay.
because you have to go by the Russian calendar, but we kind of go by our own, by the Western.
Okay, okay,
And then there's one in I think November.
okay.
The first one is democratic. It is the first and only time that Russia ever had a democratic election.
Hmm.
The liberals won. There was the Bolsheviks were the Lenin party. They were the communists. There were the Mensheviks, and I think there was the White Party, which was effectively like Christian liberals. The Mensheviks were socialists, but they were more liberals. They were moderates. The
Oh,
Bolsheviks realized that they had very little, they didn't have enough popular support. The Mensheviks and the
so
other
they
group,
just the power.
the Mensheviks and the other group were much more popular, and they were much more moderate. The Mensheviks were thinking of, well, do we keep the czar? Do we have a constitutional republic where the czar is the symbol and we keep him, or do we get rid of the czar and send him off to Paris or something and say, hey, we don't want you anymore? Do we keep religion? Do we not? So they had these debates. The Bolsheviks said, we just had elections and we lost, and we don't like that. So what did they do at the end of the year? They had a bloody revolution and they killed all the Mensheviks and all the liberals. And then they got into power. That's Lenin for you. That's the guy they romanticize. That's Lenin, Trotsky, and
Jeez.
Stalin for you. They murder everybody. And when Stalin gets in charge, becomes the leader of the party after Lenin dies, he kills all the Bolsheviks.
Hmm.
He kills all the Bolsheviks and consolidates power. It's like a mafia type of thing. It's why the mafia and the socialists never coexisted. Meaning Pablo Escobar and the socialists never coexisted. They never liked each other. Pablo Escobar was a socialist. It's why he's romanticized by Netflix. If Pablo Escobar was a conservative Catholic, there would never be a single documentary. Pablo
Well,
Escobar
true,
was a
actually.
socialist.
Yeah, right.
Pablo Escobar was a socialist. He won an election in Colombia as a liberal. He joined the Liberal Party and won an election. He was going to be a congressman. But the United States came in and said, "Yeah, he can't be a congressman. He's an international drug dealer. He can't serve Congress. We're going to step in if you don't do something about this." And yeah, good thing because he was legit, like literally a well-known international drug dealer, and he was going to be a member of Congress. He had dreams of
You
being
know what?
president. He had
You know what's the funny
plans.
part?
What?
You look just like him.
Because I'm his grandson. That's why.
Like literally the mustache, the fat head. Well, I wouldn't say the hairstyle, but yo, I can't unsee that. Holy shit.
Yeah, I'm his heir. Now he has a son who changed his name, and they live in Miami.
Get the fuck out. What?
Pablo Escobar's name. Yeah, they changed their entire name, and they live in Miami. Yeah, Pablo Escobar has a son. He's an architect.
Kick him out.
Take him out. Why? He's done nothing wrong.
I don't know.
Anyway, so I have this. We have this thing up still, and It's the 1967 Six-Day War. We talked about the. Remember, the PLO is formed after the Arab League meeting in 1964. 3 years later, Egypt has a war with Israel. Egypt has a war. It's not Israel tries to invade. No, Egypt has a war with Israel. And Egypt loses badly. So badly that the beloved General Nazir resigns because it was so embarrassing that such an Arab superpower in the 1960s loses that badly to Israel. And by the way, that key word, 6 Day War. Literally, it took 6 days. So it's been a month since October 7th. Just imagine 6 days of a war. It's like they go to fight. It's like, all right, yeah, you're done. In Israel,
Yo, Egypt's horrible.
in Egypt now controls the Golan Heights. I don't like the word occupied, but it gained because it had a war and it took it over. It went to war with Egypt and Syria. So they both team up and they go to war with Israel. Israel, because the Palestinians lose, so they do it by the way, they do this war on behalf of the Palestinians, of course, on behalf, hiding their anti-Semitism. And so Israel controls all of this. It takes up all of this. It takes the West Bank. It takes the Golan Heights. All of this. So, it takes the Golan Heights. It takes this. So, in 1973, They have another war. Syria gets its ass kicked. It kind of takes it for a little bit, then Israel takes it back. They have this fight. Israel still wins onto this, but since they want to make a peace deal, Israel says, you know what, we're going to give this all back to you. We're going to keep Gaza, but we're going to keep this all back to you. You can have it. They give up the last end of this region, the Sinai, in 1982. So Israel leaves. So the great oppressors, the great colonizers named Israel, they leave territories apparently. I never heard of the Palestinians leaving anything. They lose, but they don't leave anything. They leave. They're like, okay, we get it. We're gonna have peace. If we want peace, we don't want to do this again because the 1973 war was closer, but the Israelis still won. They say, hey, you know what? We're going to give this back to you. Egypt can now have this because Egypt can't understand the fact that it lost. It's a sore loser. It's crying. It now says, we have to have this back. The Golan Heights, because Israel has won this war against Syria, and now it says, hey, we have claims to this. We won this. You guys tried to fight us for no reason, and we won. Why do you want to keep this if we won this from you fair and square? In 2005, the Israeli army leaves Gaza. In 2007, by 2007, it was now under control by Hamas, by over 50% of the vote, or over 50% of support by Palestinians living in Gaza. In their charter, Hamas pretty much says that we do not care about governing. We care about the end of Israel.
Going back to the Sinai Peninsula, why did Israel decide to get back to the Egypt?
I suppose
Was it like a really good reason for it?
I think for the prospect of peace and saying, you know what, we're not going to have any more wars. We're going to sign a peace deal, and you know what, we're not going to go to war with you again,
I
because
mean, it's a huge land, or I mean,
you know what, this was Egyptian for a long, long time. This has always been Egyptian. This was never Israeli. But they won this in a war. They said, yeah, you know what, but we beat you. But you know
yeah,
what?
like
But you know what?
I mean, I guess, yeah.
You know what? If you're not going to attack, because remember, the 6 Day War was fast and Israel won, but the 1973 war was not that easy. In fact, it was very close, and that's why they came to the negotiating table, because it was so close. And so Egypt says, you know what? We didn't really lose this war that badly. We still lost, but we didn't lose it that badly. You know what? Can we take back what was actually ours for like years and years? Like this isn't a problem. This isn't really a problem. This was like Israel probably thinking, you know what? This isn't really a problem for us. We got it from a war. We didn't really want it. You guys attacked us in 1960.
Yeah, I guess I can understand
Like,
that. I mean, they're not here to conquer. They're just trying to make
for the
peace.
sake
That's
of
pretty
peace,
much it.
for the sake of not, fighting any more wars and shit. You know what? Keep it. You guys can have it back, but we're going to keep Gaza.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, right.
The problem is in 2005 they leave Gaza because Palestinians keep saying that you're not right. You can't have this because it was ours. It's like, well, it's never been yours. It was actually Egyptian.
I still never understood why they left Gaza.
Well, it was under pressure and protest and Hamas and violence and etc. And it was a violent situation, and
Wow, they fell
they
under
left
pressure.
they left very peacefully. In fact, very quickly and very seamlessly. But it created a vacuum for Hamas.
So
And
it also the same West?
the West Bank is different. The West Bank is led by the PLO, the Palestinian Army, the
Ah,
Palestinian, which is led by Muammar Abbas.
Muhammad Babadash.
Muammar
Right.
Abbas. So it's led by him. So that it's different. It's different.
Oh, excuse me.
You're excused. Yeah, but
Don't
it's
ever
different.
talk to me like that. It, I know I mentioned this in the last episode. I still don't understand Golan Heights.
Well, as I was saying, it's
What?
like so they had this war. Syria and Egypt go to war. Israel beats them, and they win this in 1967. They're like, yeah, we won this. This is ours. Like we keep this, and it also has like biblical stuff to attach to it. But they win this. They win this from the Syrians because this was Syrian, but they win this, and then the Syrians kind of conquer it back a little bit, parts of it, but then they lose it again, and it becomes Israeli in 1980. But they're still kind of fighting over it, so that's kind of why. That's the conflict. Is that there was this war, they won it, Syria got part of it, then they lost it again, and they're kind of like saying, yeah, it's ours. No, it's ours. That's that fight. But that's a separate fight than what's going on in Palestine because it's actually Syrian. It's Syrian as
Right.
well, so it's different.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, all right. I think you have any questions before we move on from this topic?
No, no questions.
What?
Oh, I do want to mention something about Tupac's aunt.
Okay, yeah. Since we
She
have a
did.
subject.
Yeah. It's a different subject. I just want to mention it, but she did pass away a couple months ago.
No,
She
really?
did. She did. I was looking at him like, wait, she did died.
She did.
Um,
Oh, but it says she's alive. Oh, maybe it's disputed. Maybe it's maybe you don't believe it.
yeah, I mean, it is says she died September 30th, 2023, age 76, cause of death, multiple organ failure.
No, well, that's what they're saying, but
Unless they're still trying to
I
hide
think
her.
they're trying to
So,
say that there are claims that say she's still alive. So it's not
okay.
it's not it's not a true thing because yeah, we can't really say for a fact. We can't really say for a fact.
Yeah, I guess.
So it's not really known. I think so. Uh, who the person who did die was Tupac's stepdad. He did die. He did die recently.
You know, if she's still alive, that means that Tupac's still alive.
I mean, yeah, he could be in Cuba, as we all know. But I mean, why
Yeah,
would he?
yeah,
Why would he go there? So, but she's still there. She's still in Cuba. They're not sending her back. She's an ally. She's an ally. She is,
yeah.
resist.
Well, no, I just want to bring that up.
Yeah. All right. So we'll move on to some other black person. Uh, the mayor of New York City, Mayor Adams, who has been in constant conflict with the more progressive wing of his party, is now all of a sudden being investigated whether he received illegal donations, or rather, the campaign received illegal donations from Turkey or a Turkish company. His chief fundraiser, some lady, some black chick, the FBI raided her home, part of a investigation into whether foreign money was funneled into his mayoral campaign, according to a search warrant. And so, what they found were iPads, laptops, and etc. phones, pretty much detailing out potentially, according to what I've heard in the news, a construction company, I think KKK, giving money and gifts to Eric Adams and his campaign in sort of some relationship. And it's been odd. I've been now just discovering that apparently Eric Adams keeps touting the fact that he has a very close relationship to the Turkish community in Turkey. I don't understand that though. Like I don't understand why. And that's kind of what's odd about it. Turkey. He keeps talking about Turkey, and it's not even Thanksgiving yet. He keeps talking about Turkey, and he's getting all this money from Turkey apparently. But there's not a
Have they
big.
ever mentioned? Have they
Not that there
mentioned
isn't a
who?
big Turkish community in New York City. I've never seen that.
Yeah, I never even heard that either. Yeah, no. I mean, I can't really see, but did they ever mention like who started who launched this investigation on Adams?
Well, obviously the a federal an attorney probably did, or maybe the FBI has because they've probably heard some things. And so the investigation person to the public on Thursday when federal agents conducted an early morning raid at the Brooklyn home of the mayor's chief fundraiser, Brianna Suggs, some black chick, who is a campaign consultant who is deeply entwined with efforts to advance the
Wow.
mayor's campaign agenda. So she's So she's actually the person that goes out and raises the money. She talks to the donors and she says, "Hey, here's why you should like Mayor Adams. Here's Eric Adams. Here's why. Talk to me when you want to give us money." So that's
Well,
really
you
her
kind of want to
job.
question his net worth. Let me
And
see.
so, well, to the campaign, not really in his net worth, but the campaign itself.
No, yeah. No, I just
And
want to.
so, investigators also sought to learn more about the potential involvement of a Brooklyn construction company with ties to Turkey, as well as a small university in Washington, D.C., that also has ties to the country and Mr. Adams. Interesting. The agent seized iPhones, yeah, I saw that, iPhones, laptops, with papers and evidence, including something agents identifies as a manila folder labeled Eric Adams, 7 contribution card binders, and other materials, according to the documents. There was no indications that the investigation was targeting the mayor, and he is not accused of any wrongdoing. Yet, the aide has apparently prompted him to abruptly cancel several meetings scheduled for Tuesday morning in Washington, D.C., where he would plan to speak with the White House officials and members of Congress about the migrant crisis.
Hmm. Interesting.
So, remember, New York Eric Adams was not the primary candidate to win the mayoral. He was not endorsed by Mr. Wilhelm, by Mayor Wilhelm, or as he likes to go by Mayor De Blasio. He wasn't. He was not the favorite of the BLM in 2020. He was not liked by them. He
Hmm. Right.
not. He did not garner support from that wing of the party. He was not a progressive favorite. The only thing that gave him credence with them was that he was black. And that's the only reason that there's any patience with him. And that's the truth. We've talked about this just now. We spent an entire episode talking about the liberation, the intersectionality, the racial tension, and the racial war, the replacement of class with race and ethnicity, etc. That's the only reason he has leeway
But
because there's nobody in New York City is voting for a white cop.
no,
No one.
no.
They're not voting for a white cop with a record of potentially not living in the city. They're not voting for a white cop that not only maybe not doesn't live in the city, but also has a problem with his nightlife. Apparently, he parties. These are things in the campaign that I overlooked because I supported his because he was the only Democratic candidate on the stage that addressed the key things like crime and rent.
Yeah, he was different. He was different. Even I was the same. I'm like, all right, you know, hopefully he's different.
Yeah. And he was never liked by the major New York Democratic Party. He was never liked. They weren't comfortable with that because those were things that you just didn't campaign on. There was no there was no benefit in their view of someone coming out and saying, you know what, we're against Black Lives Matter. In fact, we're not lock, step, and barrel with Black Lives Matter. I mean, every mayoral candidate in New York City at the time was. So all of a sudden now, he is now calling out the migrant crisis. For some time, he's now blaming Mr. Joe Biden for stuff, particularly the mishandling of the crisis. He seems to agree with Republicans in terms of the fact that Alejandro Mayorkas is stupid and inept and can't do his job right. Because he keeps talking on the fact that New York City can't handle migrants, even though he is a Democrat, and Democrats love immigration.
I mean, yeah,
And now
that's
all of a sudden,
he did call it a sanctuary city.
exactly, and now all of a sudden, his main campaign fundraiser is now being
Damn
attacked, is
cheek.
now being investigated. In fact, her home was raided, so that says a lot. Because
It's
of
it's it's so weird. I'm okay. I'm such a conspiracy theorist. It's so weird that his home got raided before he was gonna have this meeting at the White House about the whole immigration crisis.
well, I don't think
Unless
they did it in the
unless
meeting.
it's just me. Unless it's just me.
No, I know where you're coming from, but I don't think the meeting is the I don't think the meeting because it doesn't matter. The meeting won't matter because he's already said enough. He's already said enough. He's effectively blaming Biden for this. He's called him out, so that's enough. He's meeting officials. He's not meeting the president, and he's testifying to Congress. So that's not a big deal. I think I think that there's more to this than that. I think that he's also running for re-election. But I think that this is sort of the end of the line in terms of that they're not going to let him continue because he is no longer viewed as in line with the project that they have. They want someone to lead New York who's going to shut up and put up with the migrant crisis. They want someone in New York who's going to put up and shut up about the crime. They want someone in New York who's going to shut up and put up about the financial situation. They don't like the fact that Mr. Adams is cavalier, that he is free-minded and free-spirited, that he seems to think that he has a mandate of his own. They don't like that. And when I mean they, it's the Democratic establishment. And remember, Adams was never a part of the establishment. You may think he was, but he wasn't. He wasn't the favorite. He wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't really an entrenched politician. He was a politician, but he wasn't entrenched. That job was going to be given to someone else. I forget the name. It was a woman who was backed by the Progressive Caucuses, and there was another person there too who lost at the end. Adams was only supported at the end. He wasn't their guy. And so I think this is a way of sort of saying, yeah, this is it for him. It's reached the end of the line.
That's crazy.
That's what I think. So you're not. I don't think you're on the track. You're just putting at the wrong thing. It's not a coincidence that this happened. I don't want to. I don't want you to fall for that. That's too simple. That's too simple-minded. Simple-minded people do that. They're like, oh, it's because of the meeting. No, no, no. There's more to this. Because the meeting didn't just the migrant crisis didn't just start. His comments didn't just like. It isn't just the meeting. It's that he's been saying a bunch of stuff, and he's also had baggage, and he's also not in line completely. And he's the only one willing to say stuff. Gavin Newsom isn't going out there talking shit about Biden, even though he wants Biden's job.
Yeah.
Get it?
Right.
Exactly. So there's thing. So you always got to be careful. So I want to point that out because he also never had a particularly good relationship with the. I think New York has a thing. I think it's the Board of Commissioners that sort of run New York. It's like the city council. Remember, he had that town hall when he was in front of the council and was pretty much saying, "I'm going to try to pull that up." But in the meanwhile, I mean, give me more of your thoughts. I'm like, what did you think about this when you first heard it? And
Well, I didn't really. I don't think anyone knew that he was making any kind of deals with, um, you know, uh, anyone. But even before he was running, I didn't really think that he was aligned with the establishment. He was different, the way he talked and the way he carried himself. And no, like yeah, I was pretty much thinking like simple minded. The fact that like the reason why his house is getting raided is because of the immigration crisis. He's gonna go have his meeting, at the White House, and they will say, "Nah, we ain't gonna do that."
exactly.
That was my thought. Yeah, that was my thought. But I mean, with this whole situation, I don't know if he can win this
So
next re-election.
here's this quote I wanted to bring up. Remember he this was I think about it. This was only a month ago. But he's in front of the entire New York government, all the councilors, the commissioners, all the council. This is them. And look at them while he gives this little speech. This is a town hall. Look at what he
Bro,
says.
they're all ugly as fuck.
We turned this city around in 20 months. And then what happened? Started with a madman down in Texas, decided he wanted to bus people up to New York City. 110,000 migrants. We have to feed, clothe, house, educate the children, wash their laundry sheets, give them everything they need, health care. And this team here, we stated, let's do everything possible before we have to push it out into neighborhoods and communities. Month after month, I stood up and I said, this is going to come to a neighborhood near you. Well, we're here. We're here. We're getting no support on this national crisis. And we're receiving no support. And let me tell you something, New Yorkers. Never in my life have I had a problem that I did not see an ending to. I don't see an ending to this. I don't see an ending to this. This issue will destroy New York City. Destroy New York City. We're getting 10,000 migrants a month. One time we were just getting Venezuela. Now we're getting Ecuador. Now we're getting Russian speaking coming through Mexico. Now we're getting Western Africa. Now we're getting people from all over the globe have made their minds up that they're going to come through the southern part of the border and come into New York City. And everyone is saying it's New York City's problem. Every community in this city is going to be impacted. We got a $12 billion deficit that we're going to have to cut. Every service in this city is going to be impacted. All of us.
Good job.
And so I say to you, as I turn it over to you, this is some of the most educated, some of the most knowledgeable, probably more of my commissioners and deputy commissioners and chiefs live in this community. So as you ask me a question about migrants, tell me what role you played. How many of you organized to stop what they're doing to us? How many of you were part of the movement to say, we're seeing what this mayor is trying to do and they're destroying New York City? It's going to come to your neighborhoods. All of us are going to be impacted by this. I said it last year when we had 15,000, and I'm telling you now with 110,000. The city we knew we're about to lose.
That's an interesting one because there's
saying
no
that
care.
years ago.
What?
He wasn't saying that a couple years ago. Dude was saying we're a sanctuary city. You guys are welcome.
When he got into office, he wasn't saying it. So because he's only been mayor for like a year and 2 years, I think.
Yeah.
He said this. He said that in the beginning. He's the only mayor that's going to say that. He's the only national Democratic figure that can say that. The mayor of New York City is a national figure. Everybody in the country knows who the mayor of New York City is. It's one of the most important cities in the country. He's the only one who's going to say it. He has said he has committed a cardinal sin in the Democratic Party in this regime. And that is to acknowledge that the southern border is a concern. 2, that the southern border is wide open. 3, and that everybody and their mother is coming through that border from every single place. He didn't just mention, he said, first it was Venezuela, and then it was Ecuador, and then it was maybe Mexico. And now then it was Russian, and then it was Russians, and now it's everybody. And it sounds funny the way it's saying it, but it's not lying.
No, he's not
trying to be funny. He's not being funny in that video. He's being completely honest and serious.
I've been seeing a lot of videos of different people from different, country.
But we knew that was happening. The problem was that Democrats were ignoring. That's the sin. It's not the sin that we knew that. No, it's the fact that he did what no Democrat was going to do, and that is admit that is real. Every time Mayorkas goes to the House or Senate, what does he say? Oh, yeah, no, it's not wide open. What are you talking about? It's under control. What do you mean people coming all over the world? Yeah, that's what are you talking about? All over the world. Why would there be people from Azerbaijan in Mexico? Well, guess what? They are. Why are there people from Malaysia walking through the border? He would say, oh, that's ridiculous. No, they're not. It's typical Mexicans. No, it's literally everyone. In fact, it's not even Mexicans at this point. They're all here already. It's everyone else. It's the entire world. It's Palestinians soon. Because guess what? If the Palestinians aren't let into Europe, which I hope Europe doesn't do, because I don't want to see more. I don't want to see any more Arabs in Europe. Europe needs to be European. The Middle East needs to be Middle Eastern. That's how the world's supposed to be. The Palestinians are coming in through that border. If they aren't coming in through our planes, they're coming in through that Mexican border because the Mexican government does not want to keep them there. It is fine with people coming into the country and then leaving immediately because it knows where they're going. You don't think the Mexican government knows the fact that there are people flying to Mexico City
No, he
from
knows.
Russia, from Malaysia, from the Philippines, from Panama? They know that. And they know where these people are going. They, all of a sudden, the Russian speaking world wants to go see Mexico City. Biden comes into office, and all of a sudden, the entire Middle East wants to visit Mexico.
Yeah, they
All
want
of
to
a sudden,
sightsee.
they now want tacos and enchiladas. Come on now,
there's there's some great wonders in Mexico City.
Mexico City. So that's what's
Um,
happening. And he's the only one that's mentioned. He mentioned three things.
wait, didn't Kathy also mention it too as well or no?
The governor.
Yeah.
Now she mentioned that it was a crisis, but she hasn't said that that Biden's the problem. Remember what the
Okay, so
mayor just said?
she wasn't she okay,
No,
right.
she went and said that it's a problem, but she hasn't really gone and said, "Yeah, we need to do something about it," and that Biden needs to help. What she said, what the mayor just said is, remember what he said? We are getting no help for a nationwide problem, for a national issue. He just said that it's a federal problem. See, he's smart. People, we sort of underestimate some of these people. They're not. They can't be where they are if they're dumb. We make that mistake all the time because we don't like them. They have to be dumb. No, they're smart. They're clever. Look at the words he used. He said it without really saying it, but we know, but they know, and I know, and we know what he means. He's literally saying that Biden has created a border crisis. There are people coming from everywhere. We can't handle it, even though we said that we love this, which is ironic. And he's blaming Biden. He's saying Biden not only created the problem, but he's not doing enough to fix it.
Yeah.
Because we're the ones stuck doing the work, the dishes, the food, the laundry, the healthcare, the education, etc. Which is real. Which is real, by the way. They are doing that. And then all of a sudden, now, like a month later, he's now being investigated by the federal government. The federal government's the one investigating him, the FBI, the same people that did the January 6th. They're used to the political hit witch hunts, trust me. That's their bread and butter at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, yeah.
So I don't find it I don't find it mysterious. I find it fitting. I'm like, yeah, no, of course he is. Of course he's being investigated. It was just a matter of time. You think they weren't? You don't think? Do you think that they were going to be just okay with him, the mayor of New York City, one of the biggest and most important cities in the country and in the world, come out and say that the federal government, Joe Biden, created a problem and can't fix it, and hasn't done anything to help fix it? You think they're just going to let that happen? Of course not. He's not playing ball. Gavin Newsom
How
would
dare he
never.
shit talk Biden?
How dare you? Yeah, how dare you shit type Biden and Democrats and Democrats? And so they don't let that happen. So that's the main problem. That's the main issue. People are trying to focus. He had meetings in D.C. To talk about the migrant crisis. That's why. It's like that's simple-minded. Don't be that guy. It's deeper than that. There's reasons for this. There's layers. These people aren't stupid. They don't do things on impulse. So, all right, we're out of time. Okay, we're out of time. But this was a good episode. We were really instructive, and again, I hope you guys follow us wherever you find your podcast. We're everywhere. We're on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Pandora, wherever you get your podcasts. That's where we are. And so I hope you like, subscribe. If you're an audio only listener, we appreciate. We love you guys. You guys are consistently there for us. But I wish you guys would tell your friends and get more people to listen to us. We love you guys. Awesome work. And you know what? We'll be seeing you guys next time. Hopefully, we can move on from this Hamas topic. Maybe not, because there's going to be more to it.
No, never. There's gonna be more to it.
Yeah. And wherever it happens, we'll be here talking about it and giving you real analysis that you won't hear anywhere else. And so, yeah, we're done. We'll see you next time, guys.
Stay racist, y'all.